One of the chapters that we had in our daily Bible reading this past week was Psalm chapter 37. It's attributed to David. Interesting chapter. There are several verses that are very familiar verses with Bible students. One thing that's different about this chapter, it's an acrostic. Each verse, the first word in each verse begins with the next letter of the Hebrew alphabet. If we were writing a poem like that, the first word of every one of the verses that we would write would be the next letter of English. So that's intriguing. But it actually goes together in such a way, they really talk about right versus wrong, and how do you react to things that are wrong if you're endeavoring to live a life that's right. One of the things that he mentions is don't worry about things. In fact, there's a phrase in the New King James, it's do not fret, but it shows up 3 times in this chapter. Verse 1, do not fret because of evildoers, nor be anxious or envious of the workers of iniquity. Verse number 7, rest in the Lord and patiently wait for him. Do not fret because of him who prospers in his way, because of the man who brings wicked schemes to pass. It's also used in verse number 8. Cease from anger and forsake wrath. Do not fret. It only causes harm. And the term translated fret really carries with it the idea of the Hebrew word references jealousy. Don't be jealous. Don't be incensed. Really, don't be concerned. Instead of wondering, well, why do good things happen to those kind of people? Well, let's focus on what we need to do, which is what the chapter actually does. For example, the actions that we need to take. Verse 3, trust in the Lord and do good. Verse 4, delight yourself in the Lord. Verse 5, commit your way to the Lord, trust in him. Verse number 7, rest in the Lord and wait patiently for him. Verse 8, which you read, cease from anger and forsake wrath. Those kind of items are things that need to be followed in the way that we live, in endeavoring to be all that God would have us to be, and follow things that are good and right and just and true, and not succumb to the evil schemes of those that are selfish. In fact, if you start describing these individuals, beginning in verse 9 down through verse 17, that's exactly what David does. The selfishness of the wicked is described in several ways. Verse 12, the wicked plot against the just and gnash at him with their teeth. Verse 14, the wicked have drawn the sword, have bent their bow to cast down the poor and needy, to slay those who are of upright conduct. Those kind of concerns show the greediness and the selfishness. It's not a concern for what's right. It's not a concern for what's just. It's a concern for what gets me ahead, no matter who I destroy in the process. Let's go back and take a look at some of the phrases that are very well known and how they fit in the context. In verse 4, delight yourself also in the Lord, and he shall give you the desires of your heart. Back in Psalm chapter 20, verses 4 through 7, the same kind of idea is something that's mentioned again by David. May God grant you according to your heart's desire and fulfill all of your purpose. We will rejoice in your salvation. In the name of our God, we will set up banners. May the Lord fulfill all your petitions. I know that the Lord saves his anointed. He will answer him from his holy heaven with the saving strength of his right hand. Some trust in chariots and some in horses, but we will remember the name of the Lord our God. You read through those, even the phrase, the way that's used in context, that God would give you your heart's desire. You see, some people trust in material things, chariots, horses, not us. We trust in something different. There's a practical application of that in the very first chapter of 2 Chronicles. And it's in the context of what God allows Solomon to request. Verse 7 of chapter 1, on that night God appeared to Solomon and said to him, ask, what shall I give you? Solomon said to God, "You have shown great mercy to David my father, and have made me king in his place. Now, O Lord God, let your promise to David my father be established, for you have made me king over a people like the dust of the earth in multitude. Give me wisdom and knowledge, that I may go out and come in before this people, for who can judge this great people of yours?" Then God said to Solomon, "Because this was in your heart, and you have not asked riches or wealth or honor or the life of your enemies, nor have you asked long life, but have asked wisdom and knowledge for yourself, that you may judge my people over whom I have made you king, wisdom and knowledge are granted to you, and I will give you riches and wealth and honor such as none of the kings have had who are before you, nor shall any after you have the like." So we start thinking about the statement that's made there in Psalm 37 about the desires of our heart. If I keep that in context in the verse, delight yourself in the Lord, and he will give you the desires of your heart. If I'm delighting myself in God, am I looking for things that are selfish? Do I have motives that really kind of put me in the limelight of the recipient of so many things materially? Or am I looking for anything that God would allow me to use for his name's glory, no matter what that may be? And there's the difference. Those that are wicked, those that are unrighteous, those that are evil are very selfish in their approach to life. Those that are righteous delight in the Lord, and because of that, the desires of their heart are always going to be in context and in keeping with the character and the will of Jehovah God. You continue this chapter, and by the time you get down to verse 18 through verse 26, he's changed from the selfishness of the wicked to the steadfastness of the righteous. The statement is made in verse 23, "The steps of a good man are ordered by the Lord, and he delights in his way. Though he fall, he shall not be utterly cast down, for the Lord upholds him with his hand." Now, a verse that is quite frequently used out of this chapter is verse 25, where David writes, "I have been young, and now am old, yet I have not seen the righteous forsaken, nor his descendants begging bread." And if I take that out of the context, I would say that, well, those that are righteous are not going to have anything bad happen to them in life. If I put it back in context, I can't make that statement. We just finished reading in verse 24, "Though he, the good man, fall, he shall not be utterly cast down, for the Lord upholds him with his hand." Problems happen. I may be going without food for a period of time. I may have to deal with some very difficult situations. In fact, in verse 39 and following, "The salvation of the righteous is from the Lord. He is their strength in the time of trouble. The Lord shall help them and deliver them. He shall deliver them from the wicked and save them because they trust in him." How long does the trouble last? It doesn't say. When they go through situations where they feel like they're going to fall, or they do, though they fall, God will not allow them to be utterly cast down, verse 24. Problems exist. The instructions of the righteous toward those problems start in verse 27, go through verse 40. Verse 27, "Depart from evil and do good." Verse 34, "Wait on the Lord and keep his way." Verse 37, "Mark the blameless man and observe the upright, for the future of that man is peace." Right versus wrong. Wrong can never be justified. Selfishness can never be made to be correct. But steadfastness to God and living that kind of life where steadfastness is something that we possess as best we can is what true love for God demands. And the desires of our heart are going to be always in keeping with his will, not our own. Interesting chapter. Stay safe. We'll talk again soon.